Welcome to the Everyday GSD Podcast. Today's special guest, Jeff Tiegs. Did I say that right?
You did.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to just run through this laundry list of amazing shit you've done, because you truly, as I'm reading your, for lack of a better word, resume that was given to me, you have been getting shit done, GSDing, for a long time. You enlisted in the military around 1987. You went to 1st Ranger Battalion. You were there for a little while, then you took a little break, decided to go to college, and then you got out of college, and then you went to ROT, or during college you were ROTC in Montana State, correct?
That's correct.
And then you left there and you became an infantry officer in 2nd Battalion, and then while you were there, after that, you decided you were going to go to become a Green Beret, so you went through selection. Clearly you made it, because you are still a Green Beret as a civilian, as we say. You went to 10th Group. You were in for about 26 years, and then you were a D-boy. You went to Delta Force,
yep,
which is some seriously badass shit, in my opinion, and I'm sure the listeners are going to love some of your stories. You've done approximately a dozen combat tours. Thank you, sir. You also have a organization that you're involved with, or you started, called Skull Games.
Yep.
Which we'll put that on the screen, skullgames.io.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that, so we'll mention that again. You also have a book coming out that's called, and I might mess this up because my notes are a little scribbly, Where Have All the Heroes Gone? A Pilgrimage Through the Bible, Battlefield, and Back Home Again. Awesome. Yeah, and I've got a bunch more here, but if I just keep reading, people are going to tell me to stop talking because they want to hear about you. I always ask this to the Green Berets because I'm always intrigued and impressed by Green Berets. You woke up as a little kid, you were playing out in the woods, and you were like, you know what, I want to be Rambo, or what happened? Walk me through that if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's funny because as we get older, we think about that. It all kind of happens naturally, right? Like, I mean, we all played Army and war and dressed up, and I watched all the movies, and as I was getting to the end of high school, I wasn't sure what it was I wanted to do. So I went to the recruiter. Actually, they came to the high school and they talked to me, and I knew John Wayne and the Green Berets, literally, you know. And I said, well, I think I want to do that. How do you do that? And he said, well, you can't do that off the street. You gotta join the Army, and then you volunteer for this, you volunteer for that. He said one of the good routes to do is you go become a Ranger. And then from Rangers, you go Special Forces. Well, what's a Ranger? And he told me some completely harebrained story that a 17-year-old kid would dig, And then, okay, well,
love listening to the recruiter, right?
Yeah, exactly, And then, okay, so how do you do that? Well, you volunteer for the, so it was if for people that, know the 11 X-ray, that's like it's just signing up for the Army. Like, I'm going to be an infantryman in the Army, it's totally swinging it. So as luck would have it, I ended up making it through Rangers. But I also remember when I got to basic training, they handed us the BDUs, the woodland camouflage, and I was confused because in the movies, in the Vietnam War movies and Green Berets with John Wayne, it was the olive drab, right? So they hand me this uniform. I don't even know what it is. I'm like, what have I gotten in? What have I got myself in for? And then. When I got to the Rangers, we still wore the OG 107s, the old green uniform, And something that's funny as we transition, a lot of things happen. I lived for the Black Beret, getting to the Army and the Tan Beret, and even before that, it was we got out of the OG 107s greens into the BDUs. Well, the BDU was known as the Battalion Departure Uniform. So when you were a young Ranger and you were getting booted, it was obvious because we took away your OG 107s and you got the battalion departure uniform. So in a formation, you could see the guy every single day who didn't cut it. So you can imagine when the Army decided everyone's gonna move to the BDU, there was some gnashing of teeth.
I do have a uniform question for you, and it's completely has nothing to do with everyday GSD, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So when the Army came up with everyone would have a beret, what did you guys do as the Special Forces guys that, for lack of a better word, that was your kind of, in my opinion, as an outsider looking in, was your signature, and now everyone's wearing, they're like kind of like a maroonish beret that everyone wears now? Or
I think the Army went to black. Everyone got a black. So it was even worse than that. When you went through Ranger indoctrination program, or now they call it whatever they call
Yeah,
it.
whatever they call it.
You got this black beret, just like getting
Right.
the green beret. So it was really distinctive. And then I think it was Shinseki decided the whole army should
Yeah.
get it. But even at that time, I was like this. I think I was a lieutenant or a captain, and I was actually talking guys off the ledge because I had gone through
Right.
the OG 107s of the BUs.
Right.
I was like, it's just a hat, guys.
Yeah,
and
it's just a hat.
I think they landed on something solid with the tan homage to the SAS and the old Rangers.
Yeah.
But the Green Beret has stood the test of time.
Yeah. Oh, I was just at an event. I think we were talking about it briefly earlier. At the 160th, one of my buddies, I won't mention his name, but he was doing a change of, not change of command, change of responsibility. And, it was interesting watching these guys because that was the first time I was actually in their unit, actually walking around, and these guys are badass. And it's funny the comment you made, and you can say it again, but it's funny because to me I was with these guys, and these guys are, in my opinion, they're some legit badass dudes.
The Night Stalkers are, to me, probably the most selfless unsung heroes that we've got in special ops.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you I call them the killer nerds, right? And I say that very affectionately. Because
with respect, of course.
Well, it's a very unique person. It's a very cerebral person. It's a very technical person. What's not important is their muscles. It's their capacity and their capability, but they are absolute apex predators. And what always blew me away with those guys is they supported everyone, right? Like I would go on a rotation and they'd be there.
Yeah.
And then I'd come home, and like their operational tempo is unlike anyone else's because they support so many people. And the things that they can do with those airframes.
Oh, it's crazy. It's a little tin can. You're like, what
it's
the fuck?
It's just, and man, the balls on those guys, it's just, they are some of my favorite people in the world. It's one of my favorite units in the world. And there's nothing special ops can do without them.
Yeah.
They're just fearless.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? I really appreciate you saying that because I do have a couple friends that are still in and they do listen to the show. So shout out to those guys who are in the shit all the fucking time. But I think the cool thing is that when I was just down there for this event, just a few weeks ago, the gratitude or the respect they have for you guys is at the highest level too. It's not like they think they're so special. They're just like, oh, we have a job to do, and these guys are the badass guys. And I'm walking around watching all these guys, and I'm looking at all their equipment, and I'm like, holy shit. Like one of the helicopters, on the front says, "We kill suckers." And I did take a picture of that. I wasn't allowed to take pictures, but my buddy, again, I won't say his name, but you're listening, brother, and I love you. But it's badass. But listen, it's about you right now because that's why we're here. And I want to talk about, you went in 1987, and you were in for 25 plus years altogether. But you got a crazy resume from going through Ranger School, then leaving, being in charge of a battalion, going to a battalion. First you were at, you were an infantry officer at 2nd Battalion, correct?
Yeah.
And then you decide you want to be a Green Beret. So there's this progression of your mentality that says, I'm going to get shit done because I want to do this. So at what point when you were at 2nd Battalion did you say, I want to be a Green Beret, which arguably is one of the most badass special forces in our history?
Yeah. It happened long before 2nd Battalion. So when I was enlisted at 1st Battalion, you'd bump into the Special Forces guys every once in a while. And we were kind of indoctrinated as young Rangers that they were shitbags, and you'd meet these guys and they're older and their hair was long and their boots were unbloused, we were like serious.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the Nazi word, but dude, we were absolute like disciplined Nazis. I mean, you had a string on your uniform, you were getting smoked. You had a bootlace hanging out. So what I was weighing as what a soldier is what this particular look, and then of course we're all young men. I mean, we're 18, 19, 20 years old.
Right.
So when I was seeing these Special Forces guys, I was like, oh man, and then people would comment on, oh, you want to be a foreign drill sergeant? But then two really impactful things happened in my life. One was I went to scuba school, and it's run by Special Forces. And I was blown away by their physicality, by their professionalism. I had a whole new look.
Different level.
And the way that scuba school combines the educational requirements with the physical, and I was just blown away. And then another year, I did a Best Ranger competition as a young Ranger, and there was a team there from 10th Group from Fort Devens, and it was an ODA. And the whole damn team was there competing, and they were all broken up. And I can't remember how many were. Let's say there were 4 teams, so that's 8 guys.
Right.
They were like, all 4 of those teams were like in the top 10.
Yeah.
And I'm going,
all badass.
I was like, that's one ODA? Like, well, I've got the wrong look. So I started to really appreciate what Special Forces, because that's what I came in for in the first place, was to be a Special Forces, John Wayne.
Yeah.
Then I learned about Rangers. And then the other thing that was pivotal, I was a young Ranger running a range. I think we were at Fort Campbell, and it was a heavy weapons range. And I get a call and from range control, and they say, hey, you need to shut the range down for an hour. We got some people coming in. And I'm like, well, who shuts the Rangers down? Like, we're the, we shut other people down. You don't shut us down,
Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? And this Black Hawk helicopter lands, all right? And these old dudes jump out, and I am not exaggerating it. They look like they're straight out of the Delta Force movie. They got jeans on, boots, the freaking black dyed jacket, the watch. The only thing they didn't have was that rope around there. You know what I mean? And these guys land, and they jump out of this helicopter. The helicopter takes off, and they open these duffel bags, and they start shooting all these M203 type launchers. The M2, all these different exotic, and they got their own ammo, and they're there for like 15 minutes. They're talking bullshit and taking notes, and they're like, "Thanks a lot, Sart," and they get back on this helicopter and fly away.
And disappear.
And we're in the we're like almost at parade rest in the bleachers waiting for these guys. So they fly away, and I ask, who is that?
Who the fuck are these guys?
Who the fuck are these guys? And they're like, well, that's Delta Force, And, again, the stuff like you talk about, the D boys, the guys behind the fence. I remember all the stuff that they used to call them.
Yeah.
I was like, well, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Like if they shut us down at the drop of a dime.
Yeah.
So as I began to understand what Delta Force was, that was my goal. So I went, how do I get there? So I was I was prepared to bypass Special Forces and get right to first SFODD.
Right.
But I just wasn't allowed. My correctable eye vision, they denied my packet. So I became, after 5 years of Ranger, and angry Ranger.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do what I want to do.
Yeah.
I can't do this. So that's.
But you had a plan, though.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between people when we talk about GSDing. People go in and you're like, oh, and then they'll get out of the military and they're like, I wish.
Yeah.
Or I could. Oh, I should have done this. But and I'm not referencing prior to 1987, but as you got in and you started seeing the progression of things you could do, or these guys come and go to the range, you're like, shit, I've got to make a plan because that's what I want to do.
Yeah. So let me back. Let's come back to that one, because I want to come back to a couple of simple things, because the get shit done I love. Well, yes, I never felt like the big army or the government was looking out for me.
Right.
Like if what you wanted as a soldier, what you want to get done,
you have to do it.
You have to do it. And I'll never. One of the very first things I remember as a young private is I'm standing in the formation, and the drill sergeant comes out, and there's, he's like, okay, you 4 go over there, and you guys go over there, and you 5 come over here. You're going to Korea, you're going to Germany, and I don't remember the other place.
Yeah.
And I'm going, he even put me in the Korea bin. He's like, you're going to Korea. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, he just decided my fate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He doesn't know if I'm married.
Yeah. Doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you couldn't say, hey, any of you weirdos want to go and get drunk in Korea for 3 years? Like, he didn't care at all. And I realized, oh my God, like, I'm at the whim of the army.
Yeah.
So, he tells us to go over here, and he separates them out. And immediately I realize, no fucking way.
Yeah.
And he kind of turns his back, and I kind of slink back over into the
Shuffle to the
formation,
other group.
and he never noticed. And those guys march off, never to be seen again.
Right.
You know, so this was one. You know, I don't know how many. This is. I think this was days in the Army where I thought, holy crap. You know, and then the same thing happened. A few towards the end of it, because like I said, I was 11 X-ray.
Right.
Which, you know, so in order to go Rangers, you need to be an 11 Bravo.
And explain that to the audience.
So 11 is the series of infantry.
Correct.
And back then you had an 11 Bravo, which was light infantry. 11 Mike, which was mechanized. 11 Charlie was a mortar guy. 11, I believe it was Tango, was a tow gunner. You know,
right.
That piece of shit.
Yeah.
Weapon, you know, and I remember. So it came down again, where this dude he hands out a couple of 3x5 cards.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Little index
and it
card.
had 11 Bravo, 11 Charlie, and he hands one to me, and it says 11 Tango on it, which means I ain't going Ranger.
Right.
There's no tow gunners in the Ranger Battalion.
Right.
So once again, I'm like, dude, you know, I'm.
Yeah.
So same thing.
Slide over.
And thank God it was written in pencil.
Yeah.
So I turn the T to a B, and I go from an 11 Tango to 11 Bravo. You know, so
Yeah.
this has been,
Yeah.
you know, early on as a 17, 18-year-old kid,
Yeah.
I realized you want something,
You gotta get it.
You got to get it yourself. So
Right.
that's now fast forward. When I left the military, I was frustrated that they
Right.
weren't letting me do what it was I wanted to do. So when I went to college, I started studying psychology.
And this is around early 90s?
Yeah, this is 92.
Okay,
Yeah, 92
yeah.
when I start school. And I'm studying psychology, and I begin to realize, you know, where there's a role for me is to help these units, Rangers, Special Forces, and ultimately Delta Force, assess and select and train, you know, because this was kind of
Right.
becoming my profession. So
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to become a psychologist, and I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to, maybe I can't be an assaulter anymore, but I'll help these guys create better operators, better
Yeah.
Rangers, better SF guys. So I start studying psychology. Now all of a sudden my grades matter, right? Because I need the Army
Yeah.
to pay for grad school, so
Right.
I'm buckling down on all that. And a friend of mine calls, who had gone over to the unit in around 91, 92, and he said, "Hey Jeff, the unit's accepting guys with the eye surgery now."
Yep. Eye correction.
Yeah, so now I'm in Montana in college, and this dream of mine of going Special Forces and going into Delta Force now is alive again. So I go back to the guys running the show and say, "Hey, can't all that educational stuff.
Yeah.
I want to be
Yeah.
11, I don't know, infantry officer.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an infantry
Right.
officer. I'm going back in."
Right.
And that's a long route, though. So to go back to be an infantry, you got to be infantry officer for a couple years. Once you're a senior lieutenant, you can try out for Special Forces. Once you're branch qualified, you can try out for Delta. So I did. I had my plan, my route planned out, and
Yeah, prior to getting in the car.
it wasn't easy. It takes a lot of luck.
Yeah.
And with God's will,
Yeah.
I ended up where I wanted to be. So
Yeah, I have a chapter in my book, and I talk about 6 Ps.
Yeah.
Proper planning prevents poor performance.
Yeah.
And you know, regardless if that was what you thought you were doing, but that's exactly what you were doing. Just like when we talk about everyday GSD, when I have guys like you on the show or gals, you know, they're like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm the right person for your show." But then I hear the story, and I'm like, "You are the 100% right person for the show." You know, and so I think your stories, and we've got a lot more that we're going to go over, but I think it's impressive that, again, you enlisted in 1987, you ended up getting out because you're like, you know what, this isn't working for me. I'm going to go get an education. And then while you're getting this education, you're like, you know what, I'm going back in.
And 2005.
Yeah.
2005 is when I went to the unit. So again, like,
How long did it
That's-
take you from the time you went back in to go through Delta, get into?
so 97. I came back in as an officer in 97, and then went to the unit in 2005. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I knew it. It's about
Yeah.
an 8-year
process.
process
Yeah.
to get there. So yeah, and don't get me wrong. You know, I had set my sights on the unit, but along the way, that whole Special Forces, and I'll talk about this later, like that whole Dia Preso Libera, this Special Forces ethos, it just grabbed me. You
Yeah,
know? I mean,
it resonated with you.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I was a young Ranger. Rangers lead the way. Like
Rangers lead the way.
I grew up as a young Ranger. Like they really did form me as a young man. Again, I came in at 17 years old.
Right.
But Special Forces was just something. It just man, it's just me. You know, so like even as we speak, you know, if I'm a Special Forces guy. Like that's who I am.
It's in your blood.
Yeah. And even
ingrained in your brain
and heart and soul, you know, and even in when I was in the unit, we were called operators, and of course I'm proud to say that I'm, you know, was part of Delta Force, but really it was even the Special Forces style of warfare that I emphasized and tried to bring even more to the unit. And even as luck would have it, as I was there because of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think the unit became much more special. We started to work by, through, and with indigenous forces. We started to work by, through, and with other conventional forces. So,
because you've done about approximately a dozen deployments.
Yeah.
Combat deployments.
And a lot of those, and I think because I sought them out, a lot of those were by, through, and with. You know, so very much a Special Forces. You know, there was only a handful of missions in there where I was a straight up assaulter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we weren't, you know, like especially in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I don't really have an affinity for the Afghan people because when I worked there, we were on base and we were just out slaying.
Yeah.
You know, so I didn't really work with them. Whereas in Iraq, almost everything that I did in Iraq, it was by, through, and with. So I just really grew the
relationships.
Fondness. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's a group here, and I apologize because I don't know the name. I talked with them earlier. That they still run. It's a nonprofit that runs operations to help people getting out of the country of Afghanistan. And Zach is one of the guys' names. He can probably hear us talking right now. He's like, oh man, you're supposed to give me a shout out with the name of it. But they're going to be on the show later, so it's all good. But let's talk about Skull Games, if you don't mind. So again, it's skullgames.io.
Yep.
And this is a nonprofit that you run that is to help women and children trafficking.
Yeah. Yep. So again, when I was getting out, I was really I didn't go through some existential crisis. I'm just not that kind of guy. But I went through a purpose and passion kind of relook. Like, hey, who am I? What do I do? What does God want me to do? You're like, what am I good at? And oftentimes, you know, there's that question that people always ask: Are you good at what you love, or do you love what you're good at? You know what I mean? You know,
exactly.
You know, like
that's a great statement.
As much as I love basketball, this 5'7" white boy ain't gonna be a basketball player.
Did you hear that statement, Justin? Yeah, say that one again. I like that.
Do you love what you do, or do you do what you love?
Yeah.
You know, and I think we gravitate towards those things. And you know, I think what I've, you know, one of the gifts that I have is just kind of resiliency, stubbornness, grit, that kind of thing.
Right.
Again, I'm just, you know, look at me. I'm just an average dude in every other way. So, but when I was looking at retiring, I realized what I really love is the hunt. And a friend of mine, Mike, he said to me one time, the hunt is better than the kill.
Yeah, it's
and
true, right?
We were talking about combat, but I think hunters out there recognize that also. Like you don't go hunting because of the kill. I mean, you spend a lot of hours, and that kill is a very, very short moment,
right?
You know? And it's the same in combat. You're spending a lot of time hunting, and when I think about combat, and I think about those moments that really are burned into my mind. It really is watching the ISR, prepping, ready to go out, like, you know, watching this guy go home to eat his dinner and knowing, I hope you're nice to your family tonight.
Yeah.
Because this is the last fucking meal you're going to eat.
Right.
You know? And then, you know, the actual operation, I think because it's just so complicated. There's so many things you're thinking of. Like, you know, you're not thinking about this in these, you know, these existential terms of, you know, I am the Grim Reaper. You know, it's like you do kind of think that early on. You're like, and you have the war council, and you're like, okay, should we capture this guy? Should we kill this guy? What do we want from him? You know, so you're making these decisions. So I've always felt the hunt was better than the kill, and I realized how we really have understood how to fuse intelligence and operations. Again, the intelligence community especially the men and women that I've worked with, and I'm not talking about the bigger intelligence community like the CIA and DIA and all those fucking liars. I'm talking about the ones that are supporting combat operations at the tactical level. Like again,
just intel at the ground level.
Crazy unsung heroes, just brilliant men and women who understand how to take ones and zeros and turn it into something that an operator can understand.
Right.
So hunting, protecting people, specifically women and children. When I think back of, hundreds and hundreds. Honestly, I estimated it at around 1,000 missions that I've been on.
1,000.
I estimated.
Yeah, approximately 1,000 missions.
It's hard to count, but that's what I estimate as. And when I think of those, the handful that stand out are those ones that were very tangibly protecting women and children. Where we made that difference. So as I was going through these, recognizing I like small unit tactics, I like the ops intel fusion, I believe in protecting women and children. So I'm going through this as a rational, kind of intellectual exercise.
Right.
And at the same time, God is like flicking me on the ear about sex trafficking and the abuse of women.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And as I began to study it and realize just how prolific it is around the world, and even more importantly, how prolific it is in the United States.
Yeah.
It's different everywhere, but we lead the way in many aspects of this abuse.
Yeah, some of the people in the United States are real good at being fucking creeps.
Incredibly good.
Bad people.
Yeah. And we have everything. You have everything in the United States. And you have to have sex with a kid. Like you have everything you could possibly dream of.
Right.
And you still can't have that level of self-control to respect a woman and a child for what they
the helpless.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got out. I started working with a couple.
And sorry, let me back it up. So this is after you retire from Delta Force
in November of 15. Is when I retired.
2015. Yep. So you like you said, you did about 1,000 missions or operations, a dozen combat tours. You're in approximately 25, 26 years. So you've done a lot of good things for your unit, for the country, for God. But you're not done.
No.
So you're like, you know what? What's my next mission?
So here's my huge miscalculation, right? So as a special forces officer in the unit, I stood up outstations all over the world. Like, Jeff, go solve this problem. One of my favorite sayings, and I know you're going to like it, is, Jeff, go unfuck this. You know what I mean? Like, this is fucked up. Go unfuck it. And that was so. I could do that anywhere, and I could, dozens of times. Yeah. I flew to some place I never even heard of, no one I ever knew, and started to address this problem. So in my naivete, trafficking would be just like that. This is what I do.
This is an easy fix.
I get a group of people, and we go in here, and we just, but you know what I miscalculated on? Yeah. The budget.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The budget. Uncle Sam funded the Rangers, Special Forces, and Delta Force quite well. So I really underappreciated just almost this limitless budget. When I said I needed something, by and large, we got it. So in the nonprofit space, there is no budget, and you have to capture the hearts of donors, which I also thought would be easy. Like, we're talking about protecting women and children.
Right.
Like, this has got to be an easy one,
Yeah.
And it's
like, who doesn't want to donate?
It's proven to be very, very difficult. I still don't quite understand. It's been 8 years now. I've been addressing this problem and confronting it head on, and I still don't fully understand why Americans are just so resistant to face this. I mean, I think I know. It's one of those things they just don't want to know.
Yeah, they don't want to know.
And when we talk about sex trafficking, we're selling women and children online and in these spaces for sex. Yeah, that's what we see, and that's what we address. But the level of abuse that's happening in homes is staggering.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and I think that's why, as soon as we start talking about this in the commercial sense, because that's what I don't know what's happening in your home.
Right.
Now you put someone online for sale. Well, now we can see that and we can address it.
Right.
So I think we're just touching on something that is such an open sore still in the United States. So my prayer is that somewhere along the line in the very near term, there are enough Americans that decide we're going to do something about it.
Right.
And
so how long do you think that's going to take?
Well, I've been at this 8 years, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be 54 this year.
Oh shit, man, you look good.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I feel like
That's that quiet life you lived.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you saw inside my body, half of it's titanium. You know what I mean? Sitting over here is Ty. He's a 10th grade SF guy. He's our chief operating officer.
What's up, brother?
And we've been talking about this, and I hadn't felt like we're running out of time, but I have this sense now like we're running out of time. Like something has to be done. We're in this seismic shift with our culture and all these things, and you and I talked about this earlier. It's, hey, I'm not trying to solve this through politics.
Right.
I'm not trying to solve this through Washington, D.C. or passing legislation. Like we're trying to solve this one kid at a time,
right.
one girl at a time. And that also reflects my philosophy when I was in as Special Forces. My job was not to win the war.
Right.
I remember the first time a friend of mine said, oh, we ain't going to win this war, Afghanistan, and I was pissed.
Right.
I'm like, what do you mean we're not going to win this war? Like, that's amazing.
Who are you talking to?
And then I started thinking about it and realized, yeah, we ain't going to win that war. We're not going to win Afghanistan. We're not, and quite honestly, I don't see America winning any war in the near future unless we decide we're going to win it.
Right.
We've been playing games. So this war on abuse, I think, is largely going to outlive us. But
right.
just to win some of these battles.
Yeah, to win some of the small battles, help a few individuals one at a time.
And I think part of the other thing that I came to terms with early on in the military was like I just enjoy the fight.
Yeah.
Like I'm a fighter. I'm a jiu-jitsu player, and I get my ass kicked all the time.
Right.
But
you get up.
Yeah, get in the cage, lock the cage, and we'll fight.
Yeah.
And I don't have to win.
Right.
I have to do my best, and in the process, we win a couple. So
right.
this is a very long roundabout.
No, you're good. You're
question,
good.
Which is, I figure I got another 10 years of the physicality and all
the
that.
fight in you.
And we've begun developing this next generation. And what we always set out to do was to create a space for special operators to move into this. Special
right.
forces guys, all these different organizations and units, these intel analysts. So we want to create this space where they can find a new passion and purpose.
Right.
And I'm only now feeling like we're just about there. And I think that's what Skull Games does. Is it's a big umbrella to help people focus on this problem and still go back to their lives. So we run it like a fusion cell. People come in.
Yep.
We've got start points to dig at, and they hunt for 48 hours, and we push all these leads to law enforcement for action.
Right.
And then that
And
ripple
are you pushing? And like, walk me through, for example, for the listeners. There's an individual, or you hear about an individual, let's say in another country.
Yep.
And you're going to go give assistance.
Yep.
So walk me through the process,
Yep.
if that makes sense. And if you don't mind, I don't like to use this word because this is a very serious topic, but kind of dumb it down for the audience, because I think one of the things you said earlier that's really important is, it is an open movement and people really don't want to hear about it. Because when I talk about when I worked with women and children trafficking in Southeastern Asia, I'll start telling that story to like some of my friends today, and they're like, oh yeah, it sounds awful. And then they're like, pass the mustard.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh really, that's the fucking end of it, huh? It's all, okay, cool. They're like, yeah, I don't know how you did all that. Like, you don't even want to hear the whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, let's...
Yeah. Oh, I can dumb it down.
Yeah.
I
Not too dumb, though.
I understand it. So one of the first things is we focus almost exclusively on the United States. So there are things that we do overseas, and we will go overseas,
right.
and we've got partners. And
so for this conversation, we're talking about the United States. And if I might be mistaken, you can correct me. Atlanta was one of the biggest hot spots for trafficking, correct?
I'll give you that one. So everywhere, and here's why.
Because I'm the host of the show. I'll give you this one.
Well, because everyone you talk to, they're like, I live in it's a hot spot for trafficking. Every single person says that.
Right.
However, I would say you've got Los Angeles, you've got Atlanta, you've got Las Vegas, you have New York. Those are the big hubs.
Yeah.
but it also it also is kind of a no-brainer because it's just demographics. So it's a numbers game.
Right.
However, I would also say that with Atlanta, there's a certain culture there that glorifies pimping. Pimping and trafficking are synonymous.
Right.
Okay. So when you're talking about trafficking, where it's different from pimping is force, fraud, or coercion. Those things have to be proved in a court of law.
Correct.
Well, how often do you think a pimp uses an element of force, fraud, or coercion to get his girls to do what it is he does? So when you have these cities and areas that really glorify and glamorize the pimp culture, you're going to have trafficking through the roof.
Isn't it crazy?
Atlanta, I'll give you, that's what I'm saying. Atlanta is punching out of its weight class when it comes to trafficking and the abuse. Yeah. Hands down.
Okay.
So let's go back to that one.
Yeah.
So really the dumbed down version of this is women are being sold online 24 hours a day. And minors are being sold online. They're hidden inside of that. So people have to understand a pedophile has a predilection for a prepubescent child, right? Like that's disgusting. Like everyone, nobody argues somebody who wants to
fuck a 2-year-old.
Or an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, again. And then by law, once you start getting around 14, 15 years old, again, as working in law enforcement, it's people stop caring.
Yeah.
People stop caring. Now by law, if you're under 18, that's a minor.
Right.
So if you purchase sex with a woman under 18, that's trafficking. That's a minor.
Right.
So we are looking specifically for girls that are under 18 because it's just such an easy case. You don't have to take it from pimping into trafficking.
Right.
So online, you can get anywhere. There's all these different sites where you can find these girls. So our analysts will get onto these escort sites.
Right.
And they'll look at all of these ads. And over time, we've recognized these different indicators. Tattoos, emojis, acronyms, just different things, the way that they've worded the ad.
Right.
That we believe this isn't an independent prostitute who's working on her own.
Correct.
But there's somebody.
There's an organization behind her.
A human exploiting her. There's a pimp, there's a trafficker. So that's the first thing our team does is they'll scour all these ads and they'll take from the millions of ads.
When we're talking, this is all done on the computer.
It's all the super dorks on the computers. That just have this. Again, they have the heart and passion as we do as physical warriors, and they apply it to their skill. So, so they will find a couple hundred start points, is what we call it.
Okay.
And it'll be in different cities. So when we do a skull game hunt, we're supporting 10-ish law enforcement agencies around. So the last one that we had, we were down in Tampa, and we supported law enforcement in California, Texas, Kansas, Missouri, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Oregon, and a couple more. So
and you're all volunteers.
They're all. So we have a very small staff of skull games, and the rest are volunteers. So and the volunteers, a lot of them are from the intel community. So if you're a good intel person coming out of the military, you can make a shit ton of money going back for these, working for these companies that support the government, or going to Facebook, or going to Google, or going to Microsoft. They make a ton of money, but they're not feeling
empty. They're empty.
Yeah. So we have this incredible group of people to draw from. We've also created skull games where it can be a guy like you who says, I want to get involved. Well, now you need to learn what the game looks like, what the crime looks like, what the open source techniques are. So there's a little bit of a learning curve. So it's really catered towards specifically the intel professionals out there, those veterans that need to be repurposed. We've got a bunch of veterans that are wounded. We've got,
that are wounded physically, some mentally, obviously. But they're wounded physically, but still have it in their heart.
Of course.
And they want to be still, for lack of a better word, in the game.
They're warriors. They're protectors. They're defenders. So we're giving them a new opportunity if they're in a wheelchair or whatever it is they're doing to get back to that warrior ethos. And then another really fascinating thing is we provide the space for these survivors that come out of trafficking to become hunters. So think about that. So we have women that...
So the victims, you're able to help them.
Yes.
get in the game on the other side.
They move from victims to survivors, right? And that
Right.
and that takes time. And
Right.
we kind of call them thrivers after that. So it takes years of healing and
Right.
restoration. But then we meet these women and we get to know them and we bring them in, and then they become our hunters. So when you look at a Skull Games hunting team, we've got a team lead who usually almost always has some sort of military experience.
Right.
We've got law enforcement associated with that. We've got the slew of OSINT analysts, open source intel analysts, and then we have a survivor hunter. And those teams working together in the same physical space, taking those start points that we talked about,
Right.
developing those into leads. So we'll all come together, we'll build our teams. One of the reasons we call it a game is because we've gamified it. We compete.
Right.
We make fun of the teams that are sucking.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
celebrate the teams that are closing.
Yeah. No, I love it.
So they'll get these start points. They'll hunt these cities, and they'll develop lead packets to push to law enforcement. So we will identify who the girl is, what is her story, where does she come from, who's exploiting her, who do we think her traffickers are. When you meet this girl, what is your way to make her feel comfortable? How do you help her out of this life? What kind of services are available? So they'll build these packets throughout the week. We have a murder board, so they'll come into the ops fusion cell. That's where Ty's in there. It's like, it sucks. Go back to the drawing board. And we'll have these. Well, so we score it. They get points. So as they get points, these teams are recognized, and at the end of the weekend, we announce a winning team. We give them prizes. It's just fun. Again, this is such a nasty thing to look at.
Yeah.
We've turned it into a game.
Right.
And
a game that it changes people's lives.
yes. So
On both sides.
right. Good way to put it.
Right.
I like that. Yeah. And then all these leads are pushed to these law enforcement partners.
And how does the law enforcement partners, because a lot of times, you see these, and I'm gonna change the objective for a second. So there's these, a murder case out there, and you can go online and you can help participate in trying to help solve the murder or these cold cases. And then you do all this homework, and then you send it to the police, and then the police are like, wow, we missed that, and this is good. And then 1 out of 1 million end up getting solved, and that's a made up number just for stat purposes. I do not know that number because someone's going to write in and go, that's not a real number. It's like 62%. But then, so how does law enforcement work when you guys are doing this? When you give them, for lack of a better word, the packet where you're working together, are they like, hey, Skull Games, let's fucking do this?
Yeah.
Or are they like, oh shit, Skull Games wants to get involved with this poor girl Susie, and we don't have the fucking people?
So we develop those relationships prior. So like something that we're looking at Skull Games, I'm not just going to call you and be like, hello, my name's Jeff Tiegs, I run Skull Games, I've got a lead for you. You know what I mean? Like
I love the voice.
we meet them prior, and we talk to them, and we explain to them what it is we do, and we show them the leads, and they understand the value of the lead. And then we have that communication. Oh, there are some folks will call, and they're like, hey, we just can't, we're overwhelmed.
Yeah, we don't have the people power.
Right. So, we have 30 law enforcement agencies right now that we're working with. My goal is to be at least 100. Because that, again...
Agencies. Okay.
Departments, agencies.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So, because once you give them a good case or two, even a place like Atlanta, 2 good trafficking cases in Atlanta, dude, they're done for half a year.
Yeah.
They're done for 4 months.
But you've just helped 2 or more individuals, too.
Right. So we're really shortcutting what law enforcement has to do. So if all that stuff that I talked about, if a cop has to get on that escort ad and try to figure out who that girl is.
That cop doesn't have time to do that.
It's hours. I think we added up. I have to look at it again. I think the amount of hours that we've assisted law enforcement this year so far is like 3,500 hours of free work.
Right. And if you think about it, on average, on a 40-hour work week, there's 2,080 hours in a work year.
You're doing the math. Same thing.
Yeah.
We've done, 2 years of work for an Intel analyst already in this year.
If you think about that Intel analyst, they're trying to do this, but their boss is also saying, hey, do this first.
Exactly.
You've got to do this. Hey, I know you're working on this, but you've gotten nowhere with it.
Hey,
we need this done.
The mayor said, the parking is ridiculous down on Main Street. They get pulled. They get pulled left and right. Yeah. So the lead that we give them also has been built in conjunction with what they need. So again, what you've worked in your prior life also, So when we hand you a lead, everything is referenced and hyperlinked. So the path of discovery goes right back to you. So there, you don't have to talk about skull games. You don't have to talk about where you got this or how you got this. You can recreate this path of discovery in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And our goal is everything, all the leads that we push from a skull game that takes place on a Saturday and Sunday are actioned within those first couple weeks. In a perfect world,
right,
there's a sting going on in one of these cities as we're doing skull games.
Right.
In the next level perfect world, we finish up skull games, we fly to a city, and then we help that city conduct that operation.
Right.
So that, to us, that's where that future is having the conjunction of the intel analysis and all that work real time with the operations.
Okay, I've got a question for you, and if you don't want to answer or you can't answer, I completely understand. So 3,500 hours plus or minus of work that you guys have done, individuals as Skull Games, your team, your group. How many individuals have you pulled out of the horrific position that they've been unfortunately funneled into?
Yeah. That's a really hard number to talk about. So, but
I guess the real answer is every time you help one person, you're winning.
Hands down. And
right.
What we haven't, and again, you're going to appreciate this from being on that side of law enforcement. One of the things we purposely don't require from law enforcement is that follow up. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I give you a lead, you go off and do it. We continue to work that lead as they need it. They'll give us the feedback. We're trying to move into that space where we have that reporting loop.
Right.
But again, if you're a cop and I'm like, hey, I'll use that voice again.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jeff Tiegs. I have this lead for you. Let me know how it goes. Hey, how's that case going? Hey, what's happening? You know what I mean? Like
Click.
Exactly. So we're talking about this. We've been working on this for years. And we really are having our hard launch in October. So it's in conjunction with it's called this Osmosis Con, this big OSINT conference down in New Orleans.
Where is it at? New Orleans?
In New Orleans.
And say it again slower. What's it called?
Osmosis Con, the Osmosis Conference by the Hetherington Group is a really solid partner of ours.
Okay, Justin, can you write that down?
So we'll be up in Jersey at the end of July, I think the 22nd that weekend, doing a hunt, and then we'll be down in New Orleans in October. So one of the things that we're trying to build is the answer to that question.
Right.
Not only do we want to just supply the leads, but we want to follow that case. And for lack of a better word, we're calling them our clients.
Okay.
So when we identify a girl, we want to get involved with that girl's life.
Right.
When one of the things that I can tell you is, and this is a bit of a fuzzy math also, but when they have the information that we have on these girls and they call them in and they sit down and say, hey, I know your name isn't Cherry Pie.
Yeah.
It's Elizabeth Smith.
Yeah.
And your mom misses
your
you.
Your mom is missing you.
Your mom misses you, and we know what you need for your. So, again, this is fuzzy math.
Yeah.
But they have a 70% more likely chance of being offered services. So this is one of those things that I think people don't understand. Is they always say, why does she stay? Why doesn't she get help? Well, because that trafficker has her under his heel.
Oh yeah.
He's got her scared shitless. He's controlling. One of the I thought ISIS and Al Qaeda were pretty wicked.
Yeah.
Dude, I respect them more than I do traffickers.
And this is coming from a guy that again, a dozen-ish combat fucking tours, 1,000 fucking deployments, 1,000 operations. Delta Force, Green Beret, Army Ranger, and you're like, these guys are fucking sick.
Dude, they're the worst. Because at least Al Qaeda and ISIS, like some of them actually believe in this fundamental, concept. So let me share one of the things that these traffickers do that just blew me away. I'll share two things, and this is going to gross you out. So one of them, they target.
Grab the mic a little bit closer.
They target handicapped girls.
Fucking wrong.
Mentally handicapped girls, because you have a girl who's, let's say she's 24.
Yeah.
But she's got the mental faculties
like a 9-year-old.
of a 9-year-old. Well, our laws don't know how to deal with that.
Right.
She's not considered a minor.
Right.
But they will target her. And then again, a mentally handicapped girl, how much attention do you think she gets?
Right.
What would she, I'm using air quotes here,
Yeah.
what would she be willing to do to just get a little bit of affection?
Right.
So targeting the handicapped girls, I never expected that.
That's wild.
So, and we've seen it with ISIS and Al Qaeda. Half
Yeah.
of these
Oh,
these suicide bombers are
Yeah.
mentally handicapped.
Yeah.
The other one is getting them pregnant on purpose. So and this is why we call this skull games. So there's an old pimp who is known to say, pimping isn't a sex game, it's a skull game. And it is a sex game. Like, people have to recognize that. It looks like sex. It smells like sex. There's all sorts of sexual stuff around it.
Yeah, it's fucking sex.
But to understand the diabolical nature of it and how to really beat it, it's a skull game. They control and manipulate these women and children's mind. You know, just like a sexual sex abuser in the home. You know?
Fucking predator.
So getting pregnant, they purposefully, many of them purposefully get this victim pregnant.
Right.
Because of course that establishes a bond, right? He's a baby daddy.
Yeah.
You know, they sell these girls on fetish sites when they're pregnant.
Right.
So they get a little bit of extra money as they're pregnant. Then they take that baby from the girl and they hold it basically hostage and ransom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so once again, you've got this woman who appears to be a prostitute. She appears to be an independent. God bless America. I'm selling my body. Someone's buying my body.
Yeah.
And she's doing it all by force.
All under duress.
Because the only way she's going to see her child tonight and tuck them in is if she comes home with her stack, X number of dollars that this piece of shit is requiring for her. So this is why...
We should just kill them all.
This is why when we talk about Atlanta, and why I tell you Atlanta is a hub, is because when you're talking about these networks, Atlanta has this familial network of generations of pimping that are facilitating this.
Right.
'Cause you think the trafficker's watching that 5-year-old kid or that 5-month-old kid? No. Auntie, mama, sister.
Yeah.
So the amount of support in Atlanta for pimping and trafficking is outrageous.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Absolutely fucking crazy. Okay, so how do people donate to you guys to help fund?
Yep. So
go to your website?
Yep. Go to our website.
Which is, again, skullgames.io. Okay.
Yep. We like I said, this website is live as of this morning.
Okay.
So even
when this comes out, it'll be good.
Okay,
So we're good.
yeah,
So again, skullgames.io. They can go on there and donate money.
Donate button. Yep.
Donate button helps with the cause.
And just get us going. Yeah.
Okay. We do have a few more minutes left because I do want to touch on your book. So the book is not out yet, but maybe, hopefully, when this airs, it will be out. We'll see.
Yep.
Again, the title of the book.
Where Have All the Heroes Gone? A Pilgrimage Through the Bible, the Battlefield, and Back Home Again.
So give me a abridged version of what this book is going to be about and why the listeners should buy it or listen to it.
It's an interesting journey and a unique journey through the Bible, through things that I have found and learned through my studies and travels. I lived in Israel for a couple years.
Okay.
How I applied those lessons on the battlefield.
Right.
And I'm beginning to understand how to apply those back home with my family now. So it's my personal journey. It really started out as a hobby.
Right.
My faith is important to me,
Right.
and I love it from a historical perspective,
Right.
from a archaeological perspective, from a legend and myth perspective. So I've been studying the Bible for years, and when I lived in Israel, I began, when you stand that ground, like even as the eyes of a soldier, I realized like there were certain stories that I was told that they're not right.
Right.
Because there's no way, and I'll circle back to that if we have more time.
Yeah.
Or there's like, well, wait a minute, why does it say this? So it really was this pursuit to just find the deeper meaning.
Right. So it's your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I started talking about these similar experiences, betrayal.
Right.
Hardship.
Right.
These things that you read about in the Bible and how I've lived those on the battlefield. And I tell you, it wasn't until I was on my 3rd or 4th kind of read through edit that I really realized I'm writing this for my family. I'm writing this for my boys.
Right.
Because there's so much I've had to kept hidden from them.
Well, and it's interesting, once you write a book, I wrote Back to the Bulletproof with, I had a co-author with me. He did a phenomenal job. He was able to take my story and he built the house. I just gave him all the materials, right? Robert Conlon is his name, if anyone's looking for either a ghostwriter or a collaborator. He did an absolute phenomenal job on my book, but I did the same thing because people kept asking me, they're like, oh, you got a good story, you got a crazy story, you're so young, you've done so much, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, I've got to have this for, my family or for people to see this, because once it's written, it's out there.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for doing that. And I hope that once for lack of a better word, it gets approved sooner than later. I did not go through those hoops. I said, fuck it. I'll take the slap on the hand if I have to. But hopefully that gets out there. But maybe by the time this is out, or it will be. But the name of it again, one more time.
Where have all the heroes gone?
Where have all the heroes gone?
And I'll have a website, JeffTiegs.com, and
Okay.
they'll be able to find it there.
Awesome.
And I think. Yeah, it's also I'll let the cat out of the bag here, where this is special forces, right? Like, if you buy it for the war stories, you're going to get the Bible thrown in.
Yeah.
If you buy it for the Bible stories, you're going to get this. So it's a little bit of the special forces insurgency.
I love it.
We're sharing it all.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I've got a little gift for you before we get off the air, but I want to say a couple things. First of all, thank you for everything you've done for our country. Thank you for your passion and your energy that you're continuing trying to help people around the country and around the world. And most importantly, it's a pleasure that I've got to have you on my show here at the Special Forces Convention in Plainfield, Indiana, on location where we're at. But you're a true everyday GSD guy. So I have a little hat for you. Hold on one second.
And brother, let's do it again. And
absolutely, and we can do it at my studio, or I can come out to Oregon and we'll get you all linked up. But
I'll tell you what you need to do. Thank you very much for this. As you can see, everything I wear is black.
Yeah.
Even my underpants. Yeah. So what you guys are invited to come out to Skull Games.
We would love that.
And you can interview a bunch of survivors, a bunch of these veterans, and just come and hang out for a day.
Yeah.
Set up your booth and just go hog wild, man.
Invitation accepted.
Yeah. So let me get your email and we'll get you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, brother. Sure. And again, thank you for everything you've done in your past career and in your future endeavors. You're a good man. Thank you, sir.
For having me.
Thanks for watching the Everyday GSD podcast. Episodes come out on the 1st and 15th of the month. If you want to watch people or listen to people that Everyday GSD, please download and subscribe wherever you listen or watch the Everyday GSD podcast. Everyday GSD.